Hey YouTube, it's Lux LaFemme. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on my videos. And please, mesdames and messieurs, don't forget to click the notification bell. So as I shared in my previous video, my new content focus will be on narcissism. What it looks like and how to survive it. I'm going to read an article from the Huffington Post. I'm then going to share a story I found on these YouTube streets, and then I'll share my personal experience. So, the article on the Huffington Post reads Narcissistic Injuries, What They Are, and How to Protect Yourself from Them. And the contributor to this article is Ross Rosenberg. He goes on to say, in my Human Magnet Syndrome, Why We Love People Who Hurt Us book, I use the term narcissistic injury to explain the pathological narcissist reaction to perceived or real criticism, boundaries placed on them, and or attempts to hold them accountable for their harmful behavior. A narcissistic injury also occurs when a person refuses to accommodate their dysfunctional partner's incessant need for admiration, special privileges, praise, etc. The narcissist's loss of control over their emotions, emotional deregulation or dysregulation, is the consequent behavior reactions. And the consequent behavior reactions are part and parcel of what we know as narcissistic injury. In HMS, I explain how codependency is caused by attachment trauma, which is then responsible for core shame and pervasive loneliness. As much as I make a case for the distressing nature of attachment trauma to the child who will become an adult codependent, the agonizing experience for the child who is to become a pathological narcissist is far worse. There is no comparison. In HMH's chapter, The Origins of Pathological Narcissism, I explained that the massive abuse, neglect, and or deprivation perpetrated by both the pathological narcissist and codependent parents result in psychological trauma of the highest degree. To emotionally survive this anguish, the child's mind reacts in a manner similar to adult victims of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Hence, the attachment trauma is neatly packaged in what I refer to as hermetically sealed memory container and placed in a part of the brain, the amygdala, I'm not saying that right, I know I'm not, I digress, that does not release the memory to one's conscious experience. Right under the narcissist's thinly veiled psychological surface lies the deeper reservoir of self-loathing and core shame. Although the attachment trauma memories are blocked from the narcissist's conscious recollection, they show their ugly face during narcissistic injuries. Despite the brain's best efforts to keep the attachment trauma permanently sealed off, there is leakage. Since our brain was designed through the permanently sealed off, since our brain was designed through the imperfect process of evolution and not by computer programmers, neurologists, or mechanical engineers, defense mechanisms by themselves are not able to keep the attachment trauma from bubbling up into the narcissist's conscious mind. Defense mechanisms protect pathological narcissists from realizing the truth about their highly traumatized and mentally impaired selves. It is a form of protective amnesia that wards off psychological harm or emotional dysregulation through the active use of psychological processes such as suppression, repression, and disassociation, explained in HMS. The bubbling up or surfacing of the trauma manifests itself as feelings of rage and vindictive hatred for the instigator of the narcissistic injury. These reactions are unconsciously, biologically designed to protect the narcissist from feeling the deep reservoir of core shame that has been blocked from their conscious mind. Pathological narcissists are almost always oblivious to the core experience of a narcissistic injury. Feeling bad, broken, and or never good enough like they did as a child is simply not possible for the personality disordered narcissist. Therefore, the narcissistic injuries are dissociated feelings of self-hatred and self-loathing that are projected onto the offending person. These projections also manifest themselves as an offensive attack strategy designed to neutralize the person who they believe harbors judgments and criticisms against them and therefore are unconsciously experienced as untrustworthy and dangerous. Narcissistic injuries are almost always projections, which is the misplacement of the narcissist's unconscious self-hatred onto any person who they experience as threatening. Such threats come in a variety of sizes, ranging from a disapproving glance to kick in the shin. Narcissistic injuries even happen when the recipient of the abuse does absolutely nothing. It is often the perception of disapproval and judgment that causes the internal emotional meltdown, not the real thing. Consequently, narcissistic injury or narcissistic injuries provoke an internal fury that ignites punishing pronouncements, judgments, and actions against the perceived perpetrator. Whether it is yelling, threatening, or even highly dangerous aggressive actions, narcissistic injuries are unnerving to many and downright frightening to most. The only real cure for them is to find an exit route out of the relationship while committing oneself to recovering from self-love deficit disorder, the condition responsible for the human magnet syndrome. And remember this: few narcissists learn from the consequences of their out-of-control narcissistic injuries. Any act of contrition or remorse is just a guise to hide their fear of being abandoned by the very person to whom they are causing so much suffering. It is a psychological fact. Few narcissists learn from the outcome of their abuse. If only the pathological narcissist knew that they are activated to hurt someone else because of their hatred of themselves. The following list will guide you in further understanding pathological narcissism, narcissistic injury, and the reasons some people habitually fall prey to narcissistic abuse. 10 tips to protect yourself from narcissistic injury. Always protect yourself and your children from unacceptable harm that results from the narcissistic injury. If necessary, call the police. Remember, narcissistic injuries are rarely about you, but rather about the narcissist themselves. My video, It's Not About You, It's About Them, explains the phenomenon. Apply my observe, don't absorb technique, which is explained in my seminar of the same name. As much as possible, do not react defensively to the narcissist's injury, as to do so will antagonize the perpetrator of abuse. Whenever possible, find an escape route, as narcissistic injuries and the harm that follows are meant to hurt the projected perpetrator, which is you. Find a good therapist who can help you uncover why you have subjected yourself to your narcissist's harmful treatment. When in psychotherapy, consider discussing how and why the absence of self-love and core shame is at the root of your codependency or self-love deficit disorder. When you find yourself forgiving the offending narcissist, consider that you are more afraid of being alone/lonely than being hurt again. Consider reliable, intensive retreats and breakthrough experiences to uncover why your fear of loneliness supersedes your ability to protect yourself from pathological narcissists and their narcissistic injuries. So in saying that, I just shared with you about the young man who killed his girlfriend because she wouldn't do his hair. I believe he experienced a narcissistic injury. She wouldn't do his hair, and she wouldn't cook him breakfast because she was not feeling well. Because she wasn't feeling well. And he didn't just kill her. He killed 2 other people. So, according to the article on Newsbreak, Chicago man rages over girlfriend's refusal to braid his hair, kills her mother, and sister. 25-year-old Chicago man was held without bail this week for the June murders of his girlfriend, her mother, and her sister, apparently because his girlfriend wasn't feeling well and wouldn't cook for him or braid his hair. Shanta Harris, 24, and John Matthews had a 4-month, and they still do. They have a 4-month-old son together, although they lived in separate houses about a mile apart, according to CBS Chicago. Harris and the boy were staying at Matthews' home for Father's Day, prosecutors said. Matthews asked Harris to cook for him, and she refused, saying she didn't feel well. She said the same thing when he asked her to braid his hair, but this time Matthews reportedly became furious. When Matthews struck Harris in the face, his grandmother intervened and took her outside, but Matthews followed. How do you protect your children from predators? They go on with that. Okay, I'm not sure why they put that in there like that, but the story continues. While Harris tried to telephone her mother to come and pick her up, prosecutors said Matthews continued to berate her and grabbed her phone and broke it. His grandmother let Harris use her phone to call. The harassment continued while they waited for Harris's mother, Frances Neal, 56, to arrive. She came to the house along with Harris's sister, 27-year-old Jasmine Neal, and immediately noticed the bruise on Harris's face. Frances Neal asked why he'd hit her daughter, and he replied that she didn't do anything for him and that he hated her, telling everyone to get off his property, according to prosecutors. The baby, however, was still inside, and Matthews refused to let Harris go and get him. At that point, Jasmine Neal called 911, saying Matthews attacked Harris and refused to give her the boy. According to prosecutors, Matthew pulled a handgun from his waistband and shot Frances Neal in the chest, back and arm, and leg, and Harris in the chest. He fired 1 shot into Jasmine Neal's head as she tried to run away. Matthew's grandmother again called 911 while he fled. Harris's mother and sister were pronounced dead at the scene, and Harris was taken to the Advocate Price Medical Center for treatment. The shooting left her paralyzed from the waist down, and she died from complications related to her injuries on September 5th at a nursing home, prosecutors said. Harrison Matthews' grandmother both identified him as a shooter. A warrant for his arrest was issued June 25th. Authorities eventually tracked him down in Iowa, where he was involved in a car crash in early August. He gave a fake name, prosecutors said, but later identified himself and was taken into custody on the arrest warrant. He was returned to Chicago on Thursday and appeared in court on Friday. So let me share with you my story. On July 29th, I packed up my belongings and moved out of my home. 3 weeks prior, the narcissist in my story attacked me with a bat because he and I disagreed on how much money I saved on gas by not going into the office due to the pandemic. I called the police. He lied to the police and said that I was the aggressor and had his 9-year-old daughter lie on me as well. The police knew that the 9-year-old was lying, but did not make him leave because we both were on a lease. It took me 3 weeks to leave because I was trying to save up money for a down payment on an apartment. But on July 29th, a young lady knocked on my door at 11:30 at night to proclaim that he and she had been having sex in my house for 2 years, that they were involved. She knew the names of the kids, the nicknames of the children, to be more precise. She had his telephone number programmed into her phone. And of course she knew where he lived because she was there standing on my doorstep. I thanked her. I shut the door and proceeded to pack. The next day he sent me a text saying that this was a chick that had a crush on him, as if I would believe that lie. Now what I said to him was, well, you would have to have her admit to me that she made it all up. Of course, he said, well, she's not going to do that, is what he said. And I said, well, of course she's not, because it's not true. You guys have been having sex because you use your penis like currency. And something she does for you, you feel like it's imperative that she continues to do it for you. So good luck. Sorry for ya. Mesdames and messieurs, what I will share is that narcissistic personality disorder is running rampant. You see it every day. The goal is not to be a victim of it. Learn a lesson and move on from a distance. Au revoir.